I suppose the one thing you might say, in fact, about this particular week and the return, of course, of Prince Harry back here to the United Kingdom is that he's not very good or consistent with keeping his story in line. You know what I mean? I mean, he came back in a sort of blaze of glory, didn't he? Suddenly we were getting a glimpse of the old Harry, the happy, smiling, well, fun sort of character that apparently we all have missed. I think, though, everybody apart from him has not really realised that nobody's missed it at all. The world has moved on, we've moved on at a pace, and more importantly, Harry now has been exposed once again for a shocking level of lies. As ever, let me explain. Morning, nice to see you, chums, and welcome one and all back for another by royal appointment. And lovely to have your company, by the way, and welcome one and all new people. I'd like to say, yes, new people that have joined us. Not big on the word subscribers, but I know we have to say it, you know what I mean? What would we like other than chums to be called? Because we are chums. Never forget that, of course. That's very important. But it is lovely to have your company. And, as I said, it's just lovely to see so many people wandering around London. I do get stopped by a lot of people. I think it's the ties, to be honest. No, but on a serious note, I do get stopped, and you're also very kind and, very positive, and we all have lovely conversations. As I said, if we could get a huge tea party together, we'd have to get the Royal Albert Hall. Well, actually, yeah, maybe. You wouldn't get them all in, would you? No. We'd have to do it over 7 nights. Well, you book it and I'll pop along. I'll bring the tea bags. Let's get back to your royal appointment of the day. I know I'm daft, but it's fun, isn't it? Now, the thing is, Harry back in town, and of course, a lot of lies. You see, the problem that you've got when you think about it is when you go and do these big interviews, and if you cast your mind back to Harry doing the big interview with the BBC very quickly on the advice of Meredith Main, his latest communications cheese, as it were, she was the one that said, no, you need to explain, where it's gone wrong and why it's gone wrong and all that sort of stuff. Well, the bottom line is people really don't care. What people think about Harry is the fact that he's had his moment. And he really did. It was all there. He lost it. But the bigger question and the bigger problem really for Harry is just the inconsistencies. Now, when he came back to London, as I say, he was here predominantly for the World Child Awards, and we all knew he was coming back. That's been in the book for months and months and months. He doesn't miss it. It's a thing that's very close to his heart. And as I've said to you before, so was Senator Barley. But the big question really was that, as he pointed out in the BBC interview, he simply could not now risk bringing his children or indeed his wife. Now, let's just be clear. 100%. Meghan Markle does not want to come back to the United Kingdom. There's nothing here for her. What she would like is you to buy the product. I mean, one way or another, everything's aligned to the Britishness of Meghan Markle, if you like. The tea, the crepes, the wine and all that sort of stuff. She craves that level of sale, but doesn't really want to put the work in. And as I said to you, and a lot of people don't understand how this works, but the company, the As Ever, the Netflix people, all that sort of stuff, they have tried to get in line with things like Harrods and Fortnum's and Harvey Nicks and all of those, the trendy places that you might pick up this sort of stuff. But it's very much a crowded market, and it's a market that you have to have believability in. One of Meghan's nemesis is none other than the TV host Jeremy Clarkson, and he had that incredibly successful, still going Amazon show Clarkson's Farm. And what you saw was the groundwork of him putting it together. You could see that he was serious about this. He's got the pub going, he's got the bar, the cafe, all of that sort of stuff. So people buy into it. Suddenly from nowhere, we're supposed to believe, all because she mentioned this before on the TIG, yes, that, she loved crafting, she loved making jam. And apparently it wasn't Meghan's idea, as you know, it was the woman from, Netflix. And she said, there's something in this. So if you've been making it for years, how come there's nothing in it before? And equally, this is another lie, because if you remember, she decided to offer some homemade jam to Her Majesty the Queen in a very short tenure for, a present. But it was sort of said, well, no, Catherine already does that with her jams and her chutneys, of which the Queen apparently absolutely loved the taste of. So again, jumping on, some might say, a bandwagon. Why is this a problem for Harry in London? Well, really what he's been caught out amazingly badly when you think about it is the fact that he came here, there was no real official sighting of him until the car got him, because that was tipped off, right? We didn't know what flight he came in. We have no idea genuinely. Well, I do, but nobody really knows where he's staying. So the thing is, that's very much under the radar. And then, of course, there's been no security problem whatsoever. Nobody's tried to rush him. In fact, when he went to Nottingham, as I pointed out, it's literally empty. Nobody is interested. Even the World Child Awards, which was held at the Royal Lancaster Hotel, just at the end of Hyde Park, well, everybody knows it's there. If anybody really wanted to get a glimpse, you could have seen their car going in. There were no fans outside. I'm not knocking him on that level. I'm just saying the moment has gone. So how difficult would it have been to bring, say, one of the children to see, of course, His Majesty the King, if that was the case and they wanted to make up on that level? You see how this works. The problem behind the scenes now, though, is this. This is a glaringly big problem, because you can look at it both ways, whichever way you want. But the issue now that you really have is, when he came back, this was supposed to be this great sort of glorious return with masterful PR. What you're finding, in fact, is that the people around him are the ones that basically are willing to write what they want. These are the connections that Meredith Meghan made on that return visit for the secret meeting. She had meetings with these individual people, right, Meredith? And so consequently, those are the newspapers that are now, when you think about it, Harry and Meghan said, we don't want to work with these people. A few years down the line, when it's all going terribly wrong, well, now they have to. And the bigger issue now is that this literally does not reinforce any request for security moving forward. But that is a big problem now, because the cost of that has to come out of somewhere. And clearly, Harry is hoping, quite frankly, that His Majesty the King eventually will give in and somehow help support that, because they will start with the story that it's now not safe in California. But she doesn't want to live here. And this is the dilemma that Harry's truly tied up in right now, simply because he needs to keep the money rolling in. But the ideas are getting thinner. The one person that's truly, truly happy in this brand new development with, of course, His Majesty the King and his youngest son, the Duke of Sussex, Prince Harry, is this woman. Oh yes, 100%. This woman who came over for that now alleged secret meeting. Meredith Meghan, the Queen of Communications for Archewell, for Meghan Markle, and of course for the Duke of Sussex. You see, while things have been falling apart behind the scenes, particularly on things like As Ever and the branding and the TV show and everything else going wrong, Meredith's weight in gold has now literally, escalated beyond all reason. You see, she's taking credit for the fact that that meeting, which was heavily documented by a tabloid newspaper, wonder who told them that? Well, you see, she can now take claim for that. That's a huge success. And consequently, both Meghan and Meredith, who are becoming, shall we say, reasonable fast friends, well, the bottom line is that they are now thinking together that this is the push that they need. Now, you might say, well, this is cynical. It's not cynical. It's celebrity and it's show business. Harry has openly said that his life is now out there in California. But the one thing that they really wanted to push back on was the thing that was stipulated by Her Majesty the Queen. And if you remember, Queen Elizabeth very, very directly said there's no half in and half out. But Harry now believes, in the fullness of time, 3 years on, of course, since the sad passing of Queen Elizabeth, well, things can change. Of course they can do that. Why can't he pop back? He's just proven it now, how successful that can be. Look at how well that went. Look at the charitable stuff that I've done. This was all very cleverly coordinated by that particular woman behind the scenes, right? And also, if you think about it, he's done it in a way that, as I said previously, doesn't alert all the negatives. There's no people coming around saying Harry did this or he knocked on any wrong doors. It's all seamlessly gone a lot better. He's presented himself in the Harry that people used to know. Now, the problem is, of course, that there is one person that's never going to buy into this narrative, and that is the Prince of Wales. There's no way that Prince William really buys into it. But what you're seeing is a very vulnerable person right now, and that is His Majesty the King. Talking to a source very close to the Queen, I would say that's with caution. Harry apparently is even willing to offer an apology for that, but that's in black and white, isn't it? And he said that on documentaries, but apparently he was just angry. He was angry about the way things were going and he was being treated. This is the narrative that they're going to go down. Meredith seems to have been able to chip away at, shall we say, the ego of Prince Harry more so than his wife. You see, Meghan, as N, doesn't never want to present herself as the bad person. She has to come forward as the person that's made this happen. And rest assured, she will be taking a lot of the clout for this. It was her idea, the person with her, they came up, they've nurtured Harry. And the new narrative that's coming down the line, and I can tell you this 100%, is the fact that, nobody's thought about Meghan's role in this. I don't mean what she's done and how she's twisted it, but exactly what she's gone through with Prince Harry. She didn't know what she was getting into, what a troubled individual that he was. Loved him, of course, thought the world of him. He's a fox, a handsome prince. And all she really wanted to do around this was to create a life for them, make it a little bit special, a bit secure, so that he didn't have to go through all the traumatic times again. This is the narrative that's coming. When you hear it further down the line, do remember that, chums, 100%. And so now what happens is this. When Harry gets back to California and they sit down and analyse the press and how things have gone and whether it's gone well or not or whatever the case may be, then Meredith is in for a big slap, as it were, massive pay rise, no doubt. She's done well. Meghan wants to continue. And here's the sort of next hub of it as well. While Netflix were umming and ahhing about her future and where she goes and whether they're going to stick with her or not after the Christmas special, well, Meghan now sees herself in a very, very strong position. You see, what will happen there is that they're hoping that this story becomes the next rolling episode of the soap opera. They've trashed the family and now there's a reconciliation. What Meghan really wants, and this is the big key next, is that very publicity picture of her reuniting with His Majesty the King. Not fussed really about Catherine or William. She can deal with those later on. And the one thing that's interesting about all of this, and people don't necessarily pick up on it, but it's true, Harry is drawn to the power that Meghan has. And I don't mean power in the sense of that, she's dictatorial or Duchess Diva demanding that sort of stuff. But he's sort of like how can I put this? He likes the backbone, the drive that she has, never truly giving in, pushing forward, making sure that, people around her take notice. After all, she's managed to make this happen. Now they're on an even keel again. And what's really interesting is, just as Netflix are, not sure about what they're going to do with her, well, surely a reconciliation which can now be dangled like a carrot in front of the bosses, well, that's only a matter of time. Do you want to miss it, or would they go somewhere else? So consequently, Meghan holds the aces once again. Many people underestimate her. I think she's a very clever operator, but never with herself, always with other people. But now the problem is the bombshell that she's left over here in the United Kingdom. Once again, there you have the hard-working Prince and Princess of Wales. He's getting on with his homeless charity. She's recuperating back, slowly easing herself back into the full-time role. And everything will rely on them in the future. Not the two people out in California. But as I said, what's interesting about this particular development is this. You see, Harry and Meghan just want what they want. And they pushed hard to get it the first time around when Queen Elizabeth was alive. They didn't really care how they got it. They just wanted it. And now they see this more in their grip than ever before. Harry goes back. It's been a success in his mind. He's met up very publicly with his father, making sure the tabloid was tipped off in advance. The same tabloid that broke the secret meeting. When you look at the jigsaw and look at all the pieces, you'll understand just how manipulative this might look to the outside world. I believe, my personal opinion, that King Charles just wants to see his son. He's just been a father. But of course, behind the scenes, one might suggest that Meghan Markle is manipulating as never before. And suddenly now, she's in a stronger position than she has been for a long time. At the start of this very special bi-royal appointment, I pointed out, the real story behind exactly what Prince Harry's been trying to do, alongside his wife, Meghan Markle. But a lot of people don't necessarily understand exactly how all of these, projects are put together. This is because if you work in the media, you know exactly what's going on and exactly who's decided to, shall we say, fall in line with the current storyline, the narrative, because the narrative has radically changed. Make no mistake, right, chums, what you're noticing is when Harry was over here, Meghan uncharacteristically remained very, very quiet, apart from posting that particular image, which I pointed out to you in a previous video, that could have easily have had a far more kinder aspect to it. But no, this is Meghan, you know, she wasn't getting paid, so no need to plug that really, was there? And also when you think about it, it was very, very clear that, as she pointed out from the picture, that there was Harry, and the moment really the photo op was done and got the front page, well, that was it, that was over. But you see, the bigger picture is the plot between how Harry has suddenly decided to change his entire narrative. And this is really all down to one thing: the mission to wipe away his elder brother and his wife, of course, Catherine, the Princess of Wales. Now, there's no denying that they are wonderful, great ambassadors. They don't seek the limelight. And I, for one, like the fact, and I've mentioned this before on the show, that they give you information. They give you the information that you need. It's not teased out. It's not children hidden away, all of that sort of stuff. It's there for you. Beautifully presented, beautifully shot, and I think Catherine's films, for instance, on nature, are just wonders to behold. If I could have seen that when I was at school, that would have inspired me. And that's not me being greasy, it's just, you know, that's what you think. Well done, informative, and absolutely making you think, maybe I should get out and walk or just sit on a bench somewhere and take in the world around us. Meghan and Harry, of course, is more forceful. Here's my jam, you will buy it. But here's me giggling on a beach, you know, right in 2025, you know, the sort of thing. Now, when Harry first returned back here to the United Kingdom, it was incredible when you think, because people never picked up on this aspect. You know, as the plane came down, right on the tarmac with full clarity, a photographer from Backgrid was able to get that picture. Now, this is because, you know, this is not a royal, this is not a deal, if you like. Everything about that will have a deal attached. Now, I'm not suggesting for one moment that Harry has that commercial viable deal with that picture, but somewhere along the line there could be a commerciability factor. By that, what I mean is a percentage of the sale of the picture used continually time and time again on digital platforms, on newspapers, all that sort of stuff. There could be some monetary value attached. But to get so close, to get so clear, tells you a lot exactly about how this mission was planned from the very start. And we were told well in advance, that, you know, Harry was returning and we all should get very excited. The bigger cheeses, though, the ones that have definitely decided to fall in with them, are the national newspapers. Suddenly they have, well, foresight about exactly, they told you that this was going to happen, a meeting with the king. Right? Even people were boasting about it on their own profile, digital platform, social media accounts. That's because they've been tipped off in advance. Why? Because they want a softer focus now for Harry and Meghan. They realise that the torrential sort of onslaught of negativity, well, it's not necessarily working out. And as for some of the tabloid newspapers that he's gone into battle with, they cannot really afford it, and neither can he. They don't want to carry on with very expensive legal teams, legal backdrops. You see how this works. So, well, by agreeing to do this, and this was all put together during that particular onslaught for the secret meeting, who would be kind to Harry? You notice? A bigger thing that possibly slipped you by was simply this. When you look at, say, Harry arriving for the Well Child Awards, he didn't want to necessarily be singled out. And the narrative again on this particular story was, the focus isn't about me, it's about the charity. And it should be, but you shouldn't need to be told. Hence the reason Harry did not want to have solo pictures taken against the publicity board, all of that sort of stuff. You know, he made sure he was in conjunction with stuff. Now, the other side of it as well is he also managed to get, one or two celebrity pictures. And these celebrities are definitely going to be a lot warmer to him than perhaps, in the other areas of the media. Take the Australian singer, for instance, Peter Andre, a reality TV stalwart, and couldn't quite believe his luck to get a picture with Prince Harry. He has a column in in a magazine over here. That will become the lead picture, and it would be marvellous as how Harry did a wonderful thing dealing with the children. You see, puff pieces brought in a very slow way, basically trying to change the narrative. You're supposed to forget about Spare, Oprah Winfrey, the Me You Can't See, every single thing, the Spotify stuff, everything now is going to be erased. A new valued person, of course, that could do nothing but good across, all the media. And then you get the other side of the coin, which is, again, fascinating when you look at it, because as we were told, and this is where you learn exactly how this job works, when Harry did have a meeting, he literally post signed this because he pointed out at the function that he was at yesterday afternoon that in fact, well, he was running late and he couldn't run late because he had an important meeting, tipping off the media. Now, the media then follow the car, and then they place more media down by Clarence's house. The imperative part of this particular story is this. You see, he didn't go in the front way, which is normally the way that you would go. He went in the staff entrance, round the back. Now, I don't want to be seen, but miraculously, 4 major newspapers were there to capture that moment because he did want to be seen. He wanted the world to know. And very cleverly as well, he made sure under the instruction of his latest commercial partners that he had another function to go to that night, knowing full well that when he parked the car a little bit further back, giving him an opportunity to walk into the venue, they were inevitably going to ask the burning question, how did your meeting go with the King? Of which Harry responded, rather, strangely for him, holding back, he's great, thanks, and then dashed in, letting the world know that they're back on track. An absolute stab in the back to his elder brother, and of course, Catherine, the Princess of Wales. Don't believe me? Here's next. Her objective really was simply this. Not only about really just wiping, of course, his elder brother off the front pages, who was equally doing some sterling work, but William just got on with it. This is the thing. He is, of course, going to be the heir to the throne. And more importantly, doesn't necessarily need to play these PR battles, these games. What you have to remember is the team behind Harry and Meghan are showbiz, celebrity. This is what they do. Remember, they advised her to do the twerking video. I mean, appalling, really. If anything really should omit her from the returning back to the British monarchy, in my opinion, it should be that, because that's going to be brought up time and time again. It doesn't matter how many hands she kisses, how many bouquets she picks up, you will always see that video in your mind. And apparently Harry thought this was great fun at the time. Not really now that it came out, but of course nobody really, because he's still got that royal air about him, wouldn't dare bring it up. Somebody, of course, will bring it up at some event at some point, particularly as they lax off and maybe get into other things. It's going to be interesting how that develops. But you see, here's where this is tricky moving forward, if you like, simply because of this, right? Everything's been framed around charity, and there we have Harry making these huge donations from apparently his own personal public pocket. And as I said to you before, it's interesting this, because there's 2 elements to this, right? I'm not suggesting for one moment that he did not donate the money, but you have to remember that this particular charity, Children in Need, hasn't had the best few years. They definitely need a little injection of stardust. What better to bring somebody in aligned to that who can definitely get some publicity? It was a mixed bag message because we were told that he'd already donated it 9 months ago, so why wait now? Again, mired in confusion. The bigger story, one might suggest as well, is why would you want to align yourself to a charity associated with the BBC? Wasn't it the BBC and their shenanigans, that's still very vibrant in many people's mind, attached to his late mother, Princess Diana? Let's not forget the main perpetrator, Martin Bashir, has never been brought to hold and is still roaming around free with nothing attached to him. A strange combination, don't you think? And then suddenly he's donating more money to another charity. Now, this is very difficult for instance, any level of the media to criticise Harry, because you can't say he's not doing good things. There he is, donating left, right and centre, turning up, smiling, playing with children, laughing away, and talking to the assembled media that have been agreed in advance. There was no chance that anybody could basically get anything in there that was ever going to be twisted or turned around. It was all very positive Harry. Everything was agreed in advance. Everybody knew exactly where he was going to stand, what he was going to do. And for a few, they were given the, how can I put this nicely, the opportunity, of course, to have a few extra bon mots. So they could spin it in a little bit better. You see how this works. And then, of course, we got the full breakdown detail of exactly Harry's arrival, what time he went, what room he sat in. I'm surprised we didn't get to see how much milk was measured into the cup. Such detail. Where do you think that came from? So when you think about Harry, and now you look at his wife Meghan, as I say, uncharacteristically quiet over these last few days, she's been told that in order to make her brand work, she now needs to give the opportunity to let her husband shine. And that's exactly what he was hoping to do. Of course, what you can't get away from is the dire attendance. The public are your barometer. And the barometer said that Harry and Meghan, over in England at least, are over. Hardly anybody bothered to turn out, not at the Well Child, not at the other event, and certainly not in Nottingham. That's because they said, oh, it's the tube strike. Nottingham's miles away, right? Go figure. But this is how they spin it. So where does the rest of the royal family go from here? Well, at the time of recording this, I'm still gathering the information for you. But what's interesting is the fact that obviously, when you look at the info, you can see that His Majesty the King wanted to see his son. And what was interesting there was that even Harry offered to give up his phone and everything and was sat in the room. Very interesting to note as well that his personal security were kept at arm's length. They didn't even get inside because after all, they might have recording equipment on them. I'm not suggesting they did, but you see how this works, right? And so Harry will put this down as an absolute win, an absolute, tick box of everything that they could have hoped for, put together by his new communications team. Well, it went like a dream. The next problem now for William and Catherine and the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, not necessarily so much so for the Princess Royal, she definitely rows her own boat, and Queen Camilla, is how does it fit with their narrative? The public decide if they want to continue with you or not. As I've told you before, this is a very delicate time because it doesn't matter whether the king wants to see his son. It's the subjects, the public, us. We decide whether this goes along or not. And sadly for Harry and Meghan, they've done too many bad things for the British public, for many at least, to forgive and forget. But in the brand new world of marketing with Harry, he thinks he's off and running. And as for Meghan, as I said to you previously, this has opened a brand new door in her world. She will only think it's a matter of time before everything clicks back into gear and suddenly we will love her as ever brand. But will clicks on camera turn into hits for the brand? That's what she's been told, and all eyes now are on that forthcoming Christmas special. And more importantly, there's another idea that the team want to insert regarding the royal family for that Christmas special. As ever, when I know more, you'll know more. Thank you as ever also for joining me for a latest episode of By Your Royal Appointment. If you can, chums, I'd love it if you could like, share, and of course comment respectfully.